Hey, buenos días, Pastor Junior. Hey, and I wanted to share with you guys. Anyway, Feliz Navidad, Merry Christmas, right? Feliz Navidad, Merry Christmas. Hey, and well, I have two messages, right? one of the messages is right, because we're talking about Christmas, Feliz Navidad, right? But you know, Psalm 98, right? Psalm 98 is what inspired Isaac Watts to write the Christmas carol, Joy to the World, right? Psalm 98, once again, is what inspired Isaac Watts to write Joy to the World. And we see it in Psalm 98, right? Psalm 98, it just says it's a psalm, so we're not sure who wrote it. Pero Psalm 98 dice sing unto the world, dice sing to the Lord a new song, for he has done what? Marvelous things, right? And then verse 4, it says, shout to the Lord, all the earth, make a loud noise and rejoice and sing praise. So that's what inspired Isaac Watts to sing joy to the Christmas carol, Joy to the World. The Lord has come. I mean, I love that Christmas carol. Hey, but you know, the other message I wanted to share with you guys is the statement que dice, if God were to withdraw, right? If God were to withdraw his attention from you, you would cease to exist, right? If God were to withdraw his attention from you, you would cease to exist, right? And that reminded me of Psalm chapter 8, verse 4. A psalm of David, right? Psalm chapter 8, it's a psalm of David. ¿Qué dije ahorita? Dije Psalm 98. Psalm 98 is a Psalm of David. Pero Psalm chapter 8, dice a Psalm of David. So it reminded me of that statement, because he said, once again, if God were to withdraw his attention from you, you would cease to exist. I would cease to exist. Everything would cease to exist, right? And it's right here in Psalm chapter 8, verse 4, because he said, what is man that you are mindful of him, or the son of man that you visit him, right? Once again, Psalm chapter 8, verse 4. He said, what is man that you are mindful of him, or the son of man that you visit him, right? And then it also reminded me of Job chapter 12, verse 4. Job chapter 12, verse 10, because he said, in whose hands is the life of every living thing and the breath of all mankind, right? In whose hands is the life of every living thing and the breath of all mankind. Right, with the statement that he said, if God to withdraw his attention from you, you would cease to exist. Right, and it's also here in Job chapter 34. In Job chapter 34, está hablando Elihu. So Job had three of his homeboys, right? Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar. But you know, they just spoke. Bildad, Zophar, and Eliphaz, they just spoke down on homeboy right here. Right, because Job called them miserable physicians because they failed to, how does it say? They failed to, miserable physicians. Anyways, Job chapter 34, aquí está hablando Elihu, right? Elihu is the last one to speak, because he said that that he believed that the elder should speak before the younger. So Elihu starts speaking here in Job chapter 34, 14. Job chapter 34, 14 and 15, he said, if he would set his heart on it, if he should set his heart on it, if he should gather to himself his spirit and his breath, right? And then verse 15 says, all flesh would perish together, and man would return to the dust. Right, otra vez in Job chapter 34, verses 14 and 15, que dice, if the Lord should set his heart on it, if he should gather to himself his spirit and his breath, right? Verse 15 says, all flesh would perish and man would return to the dust. Notice that. Once again, if he should set his heart on it, if he should gather to himself, if his spirit to gather to himself his spirit and his breath. Right? Verse 15 dice otra vez, dice, all flesh would perish together and man would cease to exist. And man would cease to exist. Notice what it says that. What it says right there. So what did we learn there? Well, this is what we learned. Right? If we haven't learned something already. Existence is not a property. Existence is not a property you own. Right? At the otra vez. Existence is not a property you own. Once given. Right? But a continuous gift that requires God's constant active attention to persist. Right? At the otra vez. Existence is not a property you own. Right? Once given, but a continuous gift that requires God's constant active attention to persist. Amen? Órale, just a word of encouragement.